إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله الله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. أما بعد، فأوصيكم إخوتي وأخواتي ونفسي أولا بتقوى الله وطاعته، كما قال الله عز وجل: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. ثم أما بعد. Human beings, for all times almost, there has been suffering. There has been wars, there has been bloodshed, there has been all types of evil done by human beings. And though we have advanced in technology and science and knowledge and what have you, unfortunately we still see so much suffering and evil and cruelty that human beings are capable of committing. And so many, for the last few centuries, if not longer, it's become more popular in the last couple of centuries, have actually gone on to reject God altogether for the suffering that they see. And this is what we call, or what is called, the problem of evil. Now, thoughts come and quotes come and arguments come from people who don't understand this problem of evil. The famous quote by Epicurus, if I'm not saying it correctly, don't correct me afterwards. He says, "Is he willing to prevent evil but not able to? Then he is impotent. If he's willing but cannot, then he doesn't have power." وَلِيَعَذُ بِاللَّهِ, we know God does have the power. He says, is he able to but not willing? His argument is then he is malevolent. He's willing but does not want to, therefore he's evil. وَلِيَعَذُ بِاللَّهِ. Quick conclusion, and we will discuss answer very shortly. Is he both able and willing? He is able to and he is willing to prevent evil. Then why do we see evil? Whence then is evil? He's saying that it contradicts what we see. So this kind of quote confuses people, confuses the youth. And of course, when a person deals with evil in their own lives, they see suffering happening at home, they experienced firsthand, it can become even more problematic without having the right understanding. So, in fact, here's something interesting. The famous Charles Darwin, the one who kind of all atheists look up to his theory, and to try to reject God altogether through his theory and his book, The Origin of Species. Perhaps some people don't know, he was a Christian. And even while he wrote the book, he was still Christian. And he came up with his theory, he was still a devout Christian. Well, I don't want to say devout, but he was self-proclaimed Christian and did not reject God. He, in fact, near the end of his life, he says, "It seems to me absurd to doubt that a person may be a devout theist and also an evolutionist at the same time." He's saying, why would someone reject that? Of course, you can be a hardcore believer in God, a theist, and you can still be an evolutionist. So to him, the evolution theory did not reject God in and of itself. This is near the end of his life. This quote is taken from. What happened to him? How did he lose hope, or how did he reject God? And this was taken from an article, The Guardian, September 17, 2009, by Nick Spencer. He says, when his daughter, Annie, died in 1951, more than 10-15 years actually after he wrote his book. She was 10 years old. The suffering moved from being a theoretical problem for Charles Darwin to an agonizing personal one. Your own daughter now dies, and she suffered through whatever illness she had. It became something very personal for him. And the article continues, this experience destroyed what was left of his Christian faith. So a big problem again for Darwin, and why he later on rejected God, was this problem of evil. So let's address this, inshallah, in the short time that we have. And you can have multiple khutbahs on this, but let's address it from a few angles. First, to note about this problem of evil is it has 3 errors. 2 assumptions and an error, but let's call them 3 errors. Try to remember these 3 points, inshallah, just so you can have a discussion with somebody who has doubts, or with your kids, or if the doubts come to you. The first error is an assumption. And actually this comes really more from a Christian assumption, where they have kind of summarized or simplified God as only being good and powerful. They rejected or they forgot all other God's names and attributes, and they kind of have this only God is good and God is powerful. Therefore, if he is good and powerful, why does he let evil happen? So it's a wrong premise. It does not take into account everything else God told us about him. Second issue is it assumes, there's a second problem here, that God didn't give us any reasons. That God didn't share with us any wisdoms. And we will see God does share with us many wisdoms and reasons. And the third issue is the analysis is restricted to dunya only and does not take into account the akhirah. So let's go through these 3 points in detail. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know in the Quran, has many names and attributes. And the Prophet told us that he has 99 names. Whoever memorizes it and acts upon it will enter Jannah. So from amongst his name is not only Ghafoor, Rahim, and Qawi, but it's also Alim, and Hakim, and Razzaq, and Mutakabbir, Jabbar, Khafi, etc. There's so many names of Allah. So when we look and reflect on some of his names, we get answers to this question just through knowing who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. When we know he is Al-Alim Al-Hakim, and these words come together to describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in multiple verses in the Quran. So he's not all knowledgeable only, but with knowledge he also has all wisdom. You can have a professor, a PhD, or whatever expert out there with lots of knowledge. They will never have all knowledge. They'll have some knowledge, but they may have zero wisdom. Some people might be a bit wise, but don't have all knowledge, or enough knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala combines both, being all knowledgeable and all wise together, to show us that when things happen, he has knowledge beyond what we see, and wisdoms beyond what we can analyze and see at the moment. So the fact that there is wisdom shows there are reasons. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all wise and knowledgeable, he has reasons. If you cannot see it at the time, doesn't deny that there are wisdoms behind it. So Dr. Jeffrey Lang, many of you have heard of him. He was a doctor, and he was an atheist, and his biggest problem was the problem of evil. His son went through surgery, went through a difficult birth, and doctors told him there's no hope pretty much for your son. And as a doctor, he knew the condition. And he also is like, oh man, I'm going to lose my son. And so he makes sincere dua to Allah to help his son, to cure his son. And he makes a promise that I will look for you and discover you. There's a beautiful YouTube video, and I cannot go in details of his story, but look it up, Dr. Jeffrey Lang, and look up his story, how he became a Muslim. But in his story, he says later on, when his son was healed miraculously, and he says it was absolutely a miracle, there's no scientific or a medical explanation for it, as he was a doctor himself. He really looked, and finally he decided to read the Quran. And when he came across the story of the creation of Adam, and the angels asking, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءِ, do you put on earth, are you going to put beings who will shed blood and they will corrupt the earth? And we are the angels who always praise you and acknowledge your perfection. Why are you creating these human beings who have this evil potential and what they will be doing? What was Allah's response? قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I know that which you don't know. Angels, you don't know what I know. And he doesn't give them much besides saying that, and then to demonstrate an attribute of human beings by making Adam, or teaching Adam all names. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمْ عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ. He taught Adam names of all sorts of things. And then he brought him and all these things to the angels. And he told the angels, أَنْبِئُونِي بِأَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Tell me the names of these things if you're truthful. قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. They said, whoa, you are all perfect. We don't know except that which you have taught us. You are the one with all knowledge and all wisdom. They recognize Allah as all knowledgeable and with wisdom. You know, we don't know. So then when Adam mentioned all the names of things, Allah says, فَلَمَّا أَنْبَأَهُم بِأَسْمَائِهِمْ قَالَ أَلَمْ أَقُلْ لَكُمْ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ غَيْبَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَأَعْلَمُ مَا تُبْدُونَ وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ. Do you not now, did I not tell you that I know the knowledge of the heavens and the earth and everything else in between it, and all the secrets, including what you say and what you don't say? So, what is this attribute of human beings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demonstrated to the angels? That the same human beings who are capable of committing evil, murder, crimes, discrimination, injustice, have the ability to learn, to grow, to fight evil, to fight injustice, to have these amazing attributes to counter those negative attributes. That's what he showed the angels through this demonstration. And so, we also hear in the Quran the story of Khidr. And I don't have time to go through the whole story, because alhamdulillah, we all know the story, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows Musa, and by showing Musa, he shows all humanity some of his wisdoms as to why certain things happen. Things that Musa perceived to be evil. Making a hole in a boat of good people who are actually helping Musa and Khidr get across to the other side, and you're going to repay them by breaking their boats. Killing an innocent young child. What? Musa couldn't bear to see this, because from our judgments it's evil. But he showed him, he told him the wisdoms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what would happen in the future. We don't have access to the future. We don't have access to what will happen in the future. Something that may seem to be evil for us in our current situation and lifetime may be the biggest blessing. May be a means to prevent way more evil in the future. And then the third incident was not something evil. It was actually him building a wall, and it was the people of that town were bad to them. They didn't, host them. They didn't give them any food or anything. Why would you do something good in return and build a wall? So it wasn't an evil thing. The third incident wasn't evil. It was something good. But that good was small compared to the greater good that Allah wanted to happen from that, which is the 2 orphans to get their money when they grow up. It was to prevent an evil, which was these orphans, their money being taken away from them. And in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, something to the effect, had Musa not asked, we would have loved to hear more about Allah's wisdoms and how things happen in Allah's infinite wisdom. So Allah shows us some glimpses of wisdoms associated with some of the events that happen on a day-to-day basis. And we don't know all the wisdoms, of course, but Allah gives us some wisdoms. He doesn't need to give us every wisdom. He just gives us some to show us that He is all knowledgeable, all wise. In fact, to this event, to this point, the tabi'een, some of them, one of them was quoted to say that if I wish for something and Allah gives me something else or withholds it, then I am happier because I know Allah chose something for me that is better than what I chose for myself. I ask Allah for something, Allah gives me something else or doesn't give it to me, I'm even happier. Alhamdulillah. He has tawakkul in Allah, trusts Allah. Allah has something better for me. Allah's choice is better than my choice. I'm even happier. If He gives it to me, then He's just giving to me what I asked for. Another tabi'i quoted, he said, if you had access to Allah's knowledge and wisdom in your situation, you would have chosen exactly what is happening to you. Of course we don't. And so we need to submit to Allah, whether we understand at that point or not. We submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decisions and choices that He makes for us. Going to the second point, and let's go through some of the wisdoms Allah told us. Remember the first wisdom, the first point was restricting Allah to only knowledgeable or only merciful and good. Fallacy, wrong. Allah is more than that. Second point, that Allah didn't give us wisdoms. Well, Allah gave us many wisdoms as I already mentioned, and here are some more wisdoms or reasons. Number one, life is a test. الذي هو الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. The whole purpose is to test us who is best in action. Unless He gives us free will, there is no test. And the free will He gives us, people can use it to do all sorts of evil, or can use it to counter evil and do good. Second, Allah never told us that He created us just to enjoy life and chill, and that there will be no evil. No, Allah told us there will be evil. Allah told us He has created you, and you the one who makes choices. He even created evil, things that can become evil, like shaitan, for you to counter that evil. So there's nowhere that God promised there will be nothing bad that happens. No, you will choose things. You will decide things, and things might happen to you even if you don't choose it, as a means to test you and your reactions. Number three, and there are many by the way, we're going to just go through a couple here. To recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to see things that are imperfect, things that are bad out there, to know the opposite of them. So to recognize mercy, you need to see cruelty. To recognize Allah's generosity is to see people's miserliness. To recognize Allah's giving, again, you need to see people withholding. And to see Allah's light, you need to see the darkness, etc., etc. These things become meaningless unless you see the opposites of them. So all these things actually help us to recognize Allah's beautiful attributes and majesty and perfection when we see these things happen around us. Fourth point, there are a lot of secondary goods that happen of what seems to be evils. So for example, after a disaster, an earthquake, or even after something evil as a war, unjust war, oppressive war, well, you have the opportunity to help people. You have the opportunity to give charity. You have the opportunity to sponsor orphans. You have the opportunity to be brave in the face of the oppression. You have the opportunity to fight for the sake of those who are being oppressed with your words, with your money, with your body. You have no opportunity for any of these if there's no bad things happening around. So the bad out there gives rise for many opportunities of good. And it is part of the test for those who are watching to see what are they doing to the suffering that is happening around them, to the injustice that's happening around them. We are going to be accounted, brothers and sisters, on the day of judgment for the things we see around us. If we don't care, we don't move, we don't talk, we just put it aside and say, that's none of my business. No, it is. And finally, I'll move forward here. The bad that happens, the seemingly bad that happens, can be actually a source of good for the believers. As the hadith says, عجبا لأمر المؤمن أمره كله له خير إن صابه سراء شكر فكان خيرا له وإن أصابته ضراء صبر فكان خيرا له وليس ذلك إلا لمؤمن. That is amazing, the affair of a believer. When something good happens to them, they are thankful to Allah, so it is good for them. They get rewarded. And when something bad happens to them, they are patient with what Allah has decreed. You don't need to understand the wisdom. It is difficult. No one's saying it's not difficult when you lose a loved one or when you go through a disease or an illness or oppression happens to you. It is difficult. But when you have the patience and you accept, then the reward comes to you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is only for a believer who understands life, understands reality, and understands Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And finally, the third point, restricting the analysis to dunya only. We know this dunya is only one phase. It's only through the akhirah, through the day of judgment, where Allah's full attributes come into play, when real justice happens, when those who commit these evils will be compensated accordingly, when those who are suffering will be compensated and rewarded for the suffering. It is only through the day of judgment where real balance happens. Allah never promises that the balance is going to happen necessarily while we're alive. Those who commit the crimes may get away with it, but they will not get away with it in the next life. Those who die and are justly and are killed and oppressed and their money taken away and their property and their lands are taken away, they may die without getting justice. But the akhirah, there will be justice. So, by rejecting Allah for the ignorance of not understanding the problem of evil, you're creating more problems. You're actually having more issues. You will be more depressed because you don't even have answers to the same problems that you're bringing forward. You're creating more problems and more depression by just restricting it to this life. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Summarizing the khutbah inshallah, 3 points again so that you remember. First point of the problem of evil is the whole premise is wrong because number one, God is more than just merciful or kind and good, as well as powerful. God has other names and attributes that completes the understanding of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Number two is that Allah gave us many reasons why He allowed suffering to happen. He did not promise no suffering will happen. He reassured us suffering will happen and gave us many reasons for it. And many more reasons than I mentioned even. And finally, number three, the ultimate justice and balance is when you take the akhirah into account and now restrict this analysis of suffering only to the dunya. And finally, brothers and sisters, questions of Allah's wisdom sometimes comes into play. And this problem is also, again, an issue of questioning Allah's wisdoms. Allah gave us wisdom sometimes He doesn't. When we don't understand Allah's wisdoms, we need to understand that Allah has the picture. We have the pixels. So we cannot analyze a whole picture from just a pixel. When we don't understand Allah's wisdoms, it's not a reason to reject Allah or lose hope in Allah. It's a reason to humble ourselves to Allah's knowledge and wisdom and to submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات والأحياء منهم والأموات إنك قريب مجيب الدعوات وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم الحمد لله رب العالمين وآخر الصلاة.
Continue. Go ahead.